Today we're going to be diving back into Astonishing Swordsmen and Sorcerers of Hyperborea. So pick up your favorite weapon, don some armor, and let's solve the riddle of steel as we're looking at Fighter and the 7 subclasses found in this game today on Rolling with Advantage. Today, as we dive into the fighter classes of Astonishing Swordsmen and Sorcerers of Hyperborea, we are first going to look at the base class fighter. Now, the way this game works is you have your base classes and you have your subclasses. We're going to be looking at the base class fighter and then the 7 subclasses of fighter as well, and just a little tidbit of what makes each one unique and why you might want to play one. Now, a lot of people think, oh, I don't want to play a base class, I'll just play the subclass, because you can start the game as a barbarian or something. So a lot of people overlook the fighter, but I really want to pause and say maybe you don't want to do that for a couple of reasons. First off, a fighter is very versatile. He can use any armor, any weapon, any shield. All you need is a pretty decent strength score, so they're very easy to roll into. But let's take a look at what you get for being a fighter. First off, I want you to take a look at the fact that his experience points table, they level pretty fast. You only need 2,000 experience to level from 1 to 2, and that kind of sets the stage of how much you need as you level. A barbarian, you'll notice, will need 3,000 experience to level up to 2. So you'll actually level faster as a fighter. Now, if you look at this, it may look like he doesn't have a lot going on for him. Standard attack rate is the same across all fighters, where they can attack once a round, and then every other round they can attack twice if they have weapon mastery, which all the fighters do. So you basically master a weapon. When you're swinging with that weapon, you can swing basically on even rounds. You get a second attack is the way that kind of works. And that gets better as you level when using a weapon that you're mastered in. Now, a fighter actually starts at level 1 with 2 weapons that they're mastered. Now, the other thing that they get is they get this thing called heroic fighting. Now, heroic fighting is kind of what makes the fighter an absolute killing machine. From 1st to 6th levels, when combating opponents of no more than 1 hit dice, double normal melee attacks per round. So you attack twice a round or 3 times a round if wielding a mastered weapon. So let's just say at level 1 you say, I'm going to master a 2-handed sword, and you go up and you fight against a bunch of bandits that are, half hit dice or 1 hit dice. You're going to get 3 attacks a round at level 1. And there's a lot of fights in this game where you're fighting a lot of smaller things, and the fighter can just dish it out and just clear waves of smaller minions. So I think the fighter is something you absolutely should take a look at rolling. And I think you'll just really enjoy it. It'd be a fun playstyle, just knowing that, if you've got a lot of little guys coming in, you can just hack through them. So that's one of the reasons I think you should take a look at the fighter. He gets better with his weapons as he levels up, and then every class at 9th level has rules kind of built in on the type of stronghold that they can have. So that is the fighter. Now what we're going to do is we're going to skip over the other base classes, because today we just want to talk about the riddle of steel, and that is the fighters. So now we're going to take a look at the 7 subclasses, and I'm going to go kind of quickly through them and just kind of tell you a little bit about them, what makes them different, and why you should consider playing one. The first one we're going to take a look at is the Barbarian. Now, the Barbarian is probably the most iconic of the fighting classes for this particular game, because of Conan, and just if you're playing in Hyperborea, Conan is just it's the world of Conan. This is the class for you. Now, the thing with rolling a Barbarian is, if you look at the top of the page here, you're going to need Strength, Dex, and Constitution all to be 13. So you're going to have pretty good rolls to be able to play this class, and depending on how your DM is running stats, this may be a barrier to playing this. You do get a D12 hit points as opposed to the fighter's D10. They will level slower than a fighter. This is actually going to be the slowest leveling character of all the fighters we're going to take a look at today. And one of the reasons is because a barbarian is kind of stacked. If you take a look at the fact that they are a fighter, they're going to have rogue abilities, and they're also going to have some ranger-ish abilities in the sense that they have tracking, They have wilderness survival. They can climb. They can draw poison. They're hardy. They get a +2 to all of their saving throws. They can move silently. There's a lot of cool things that these guys can do. And of course, they also get the attack rate and the weapon mastery like all the other fighters. So you're going to be able to do some roguey type things. You're going to be able to attack a lot. You're going to have a lot of hit points. And one of the other things they put in with the Barbarian that I think is super cool flavor is the Sense Magic and Sorceress Distrust. Basically, this gives you a cue of how you could roleplay this character, that you can sense magic, and if you sense magic, you may not trust that person or you may not like that person simply because you just don't trust, anything that has to do with magic. I think it'd be a very cool roleplay element for this character. Also with Barbarians, like I said, you get this wilderness survival, and then at 9th level, like everyone else, you get your stronghold tribal leader type of deal. Now, as we move forward, the Berserker. Now, I've had a lot of people ask me what the differences are between a Barbarian and a Berserker, because one thing that the Barbarian didn't have is the rage mechanic that's kind of become in vogue with Barbarians now in new editions of D&D. That enters the Berserker. The Berserker is our rampaging, raging instrument of death and destruction. That is the Berserker. So as we go look at the Berserker, this is probably the hardest class to get if you're rolling stats straight or just depending on how you're doing it, because you need a 15 strength and a 15 constitution. And to be honest with you, you probably want a pretty good dexterity as well. The reason is that this is a character that does well to not wear armor. He gets a thick skin ability, which gives him a natural AC, which we see on his chart. That gets better as he levels. And you could use that with a decent shield or something of that nature, and that could really help protect yourself down the road. Now, one thing that you could look at with this character is say, okay, rage. I'm going to rage, and you're going to think it's like 5th edition D&D, or because that's what we're used to, and it's not. There's a lot more going on with the rage. What this rage is going to allow you to do is it increases your melee attack rate. And if you're using a weapon you're mastered with, it increases it even further. So at first level, let's say you picked a battle axe, and normally you swing once a round, you're mastered in it, you get that 3 attacks every 2 rounds. Well, now that moves up to 5 attacks every 2 rounds if you're mastered in that weapon. So in round 1, you would swing twice, and round 2, you'd swing 3 times. That alone is crazy. Now, you also get +2 to attack and damage rolls on all melee attacks. You become immune to fire. You are frightening. People get a minus to their morale checks because you're raging. You get a burst of hit points. You're harder to bring down. You refuse to surrender, which could be good or bad, depending on the situation. You're immune to fear. You have all this going for you, but here's the drawback. One is that you're uncontrollable. Once everyone has been defeated, there is a chance that you will then attack the next living creature within 30 feet of you, not 60. So if you're done killing everybody, you're going to have to roll a die to say, hey, am I going to go attack my friends now because I'm not done hacking? That is awesome flavor. It's a little bit dangerous, and the party may have to say, hey, we're getting low on enemies to kill. We all need to get more than 30 feet away from this guy before he has a chance to kill all of us. I think that's a lot of fun. X Factor, kind of a Wolverine Berserker style. I think it'd be really fun to play. Also, whenever this Berserker rage ends, he is exhausted, and that can be a very long period where you're just winded. That is a good balancing mechanic for this. He can climb. He gets the hardy feat just like the Barbarian does, where he gets +2 bonuses to all saving throws. We already talked about the thick skin. It also helps you against the weather and the elements. It keeps you warm, basically. All things are really fun. Now, the last cool thing that we'll talk about with the Berserker is even when he's raging at 7th level, he picks up a bestial form. This is not really like a lycanthropy werewolf style. This is more almost like druidic in a way, where they'll turn into this monster. They'll get, think of him, he gets really hairy. Maybe he grows claws. He gets, if he's 6 feet tall, tall. He's now 9 feet tall. He doubles his weight. He gets half of his hit points back. And when he starts attacking, he can do claws, he can do bites. If he lands with those, he can do like the classic, claw, bear hug for extra damage. All these things are really, really cool. And kind of good flavor for the Berserker. And that's one thing I want to say about this game, is a lot of the classes I feel are not necessarily made for balance, they're made for flavor, and I love that. Next, we're going to take a look at the Cataphract. Now, the Cataphract is a class that you'll notice that they don't seem to need as much experience to level as a Barbarian, but they need a little bit more than a Fighter. A Cataphract is a class that I would seriously talk to my DM first before I rolled, because if you're not going to have a horse a lot, I would not play a Cataphract. That's just... It is the same issue the Cavalier had in older editions of D&D. It's a great class to have in the game. I'm glad it's in here. I think there would be certain games where this would be amazing. I would just talk to your DM first to kind of see what type of campaign we're talking about before you decide on playing this. So, for the Cataphract, you can use any weapon, any shield, any weapon. You don't need a lot for stats. You just need to not have anything kind of terrible. So that's good. Attack rate, weapon mastery, same as all the other fighters, except this one you actually get one weapon plus the lance. It kind of gives you the lance as a freebie. The idea behind this is that this is the class that really wants to be on a horse, because the big thing with him is his mounted charge. If he charges on a horseback, he gets a crazy bonus to both his attack roll and his damage. He just murders people if he's on a horse with a lance. He also picks up Skilled Defender, which is good even if he's not on a horse, which gives him a bonus to his AC. So they're not totally, useless. They're still a good fighter off of a horse. But again, really talk about, are you going to be mounted a lot in this type of a game? If you're going to be dungeon delving a lot, then maybe this isn't something I would run with. That's just my thought. So I would love to hear any feedback if anyone out there has played a class like this and have had different experiences, but that's what I've seen at the tables I've played at. Great art. Love it. All right. Huntsman. Huntsman is a class I'm super excited about, because basically what they did with this game is we have the Huntsman and we have the Ranger, and they're two totally different classes, and both of them look really good. Starting with the Huntsman, what this class is that you need, for attributes, you just need 9 strength, dexterity, wisdom, charisma 12, it needs to be a little bit higher because you're going to be doing some animal handling. You can't wear the heavier armor, but you can use any weapon and you can use any shield. It levels the same as the Cataphract, so they're going to level pretty fast, which I think is pretty good, actually. I thought this one might need a little bit more experience table, just because not only are you a fighter with weapon mastery and things of that nature, but you also pick up Ambusher, which is going to be great if you're going to be like prowling around in the woods and jumping on people. You get Hide, you get Climb like a rogue, you get Move silently. You also pick up this ability called Predator, which allows you to do bonus damage to Beast, and even giant versions of Beast. And you also, later on, that can actually parlay into doing bonus damage against Lycans. They have a special ability where they do more damage to Lycans, so werewolves and things of that nature. There's an entire mechanic they've put in this for you to subdue an animal and to tame it, and then you can actually end up taming multiple pets, so you could actually have like a pack of wolves running around with you. Very cool. The fact that now we actually have a competent fighter class who also has a pet, instead of it being, I need a pet, if I don't have it, I'm terrible. I love the fact that this character is good independently of the pet, but the pet also can be, an amazing little ally to have with you, or allies. Again, he has the tracking, wilderness survival like we saw with the Barbarian. We already talked about the Werewolf Slayer. I think this is a fantastic class. I think for the world of Hyperborea, having a huntsman in the party can be absolutely invaluable, just for the tracking and the wilderness survival. This is a game where civilization is sparse, and having a huntsman or a ranger or something, or barbarian even, in the class in the group could be a huge boon to the group. So highly recommend the huntsman. Probably one of my favorite pieces of art in the books. I've always got to pause and just talk about how much I love this thing. All right, Paladin. Paladin is another class that I highly recommend picking up if you're looking at what you want to play. You need a 9 strength, dex, and wisdom, but you need a really high charisma. You need a 15 charisma. And why paladins are good is, they have a lot of things that are you will see as typical paladin fare. They can turn undead. They can eventually cast cleric spells, and they get healing hands. I mean, all this stuff sounds very similar to other paladins we've seen, but this is a different world and a different game. And healing hands is a lot more powerful in this than in the newer editions. The reason is that Paladin can restore 2 hit points per day per level of experience. That doesn't sound like much, but in this game, healing is rare and hard to come by, and having that on demand is huge. But that's not the reason I'm pushing Paladin. The reason I'm pushing Paladin is that they can also cure disease once a week with this ability. Disease is a problem in this game in Hyperborea. It's pretty prevalent, and I highly recommend having multiple ways to get rid of it. Just depends on the DM, but just looking through the bestiary, there's a lot of things that do pretty significant, horrible diseases. And so having that on demand is incredible. Of course, this is a throwback to the old Paladin where, they had to be noble and virtuous. They had to have like a code, a sense of honor. All of that is here. He gets horsemanship like we saw with the cataphract and also with the barbarian. He can sense evil. He's immune to effects that magically induce fear. That's really cool. Righteous wrath is going to let him do additional damage, particularly if it's against someone evil. He does even more damage if he's got a lance. He picks up a sacred mount. All of these things are pretty cool, and while they are typical paladin fare for the most part, and if you take that kit and put it in Hyperborea, it's way more powerful, I feel, than it would be in a Faerun setting or something of that nature. So, highly recommend taking a look at rolling a Paladin. They also, like I said, at level 7, they be able to cast spells. Oh, and then backing up at level 5, they can turn undead, which is something to definitely take a look at because undead are pretty prevalent in Hyperborea as well. All right, lots to talk about. Almost there. We're at the Ranger. The Ranger. The class that a lot of people over the years have said, oh, the Ranger sucks. What happened? Oh, the Ranger died. This Ranger, I think, can bring it. The Ranger is, you don't need a lot of stats to roll with a Ranger. You just need, pretty decent stats across the board. They can use any armor, they can use any shield, and they can use any weapon. Now, that's pretty interesting. They can actually wear plate mail. So this is a different Ranger. He's alert, he's hard to jump on and surprise, he's good at surprising others. His attack rate and mastery weapon is the same as we've seen across the board with all the other fighters. He gets discern noise, which is something we see more with thieves, which is really cool. He gets hide and move silently, basically your fighter thief abilities here. But otherworldly enemies, that is something that's very interesting. In this particular game, he can identify and deal additional damage to really awful stuff. Aboleths and crabmen, elder things, fishmen, which is pretty prevalent in the game. The Great Race, Migo, Night Gaunts. I mean, these are all really horrible things. Tentacular horrors. That would be your displacer beast and things of that nature. So he does a lot of extra cool things to the stuff that you really need to kind of step up to fight. I think that's pretty handy. He gets tracking. He can actually conceal tracks, which is the first time I've seen someone that could do this. Those are all really cool things. And he gets the wilderness survival. But one of the cool things about the Ranger is its versatility. Not only is he a solid fighter with thieving abilities, when I say thief abilities, I mean like move silently and hide. He gets the outdoorsman type skills. He also picks up spell casting at level 7, and he gets to pick a druid spell. And then he also at level 8 picks a magician spell. So think of all of the different ways when you take a look at the spell list later on of all the different utility that you can bring with the fact that you have all these other things that you're bringing to the table. So the Ranger, I think, is a very robust class that can do a lot. And I think this would be a really good class to play. All right. Warlock. Warlock is going to be probably one of the more popular classes to play, and there's a lot of reason for it. They look super cool. So the Warlock is the classic Gish, the fighter magician, and the Elric of the group, if you will. And what this class needs is he needs 12 strength and 12 intelligence, although I would recommend having probably higher intelligence so you get the spell bonuses. And also, if you're going to be choosing your spell selection later on, I'll explain a little bit more, you'll need a little bit higher wisdom as well. Now, what this class is, he has fewer hit points than we see with the other fighters, but he still is able to fight. He still gets his weapon mastery like we see with all the other fighters, but what makes him unique is that he can use magic items, he can read magic, he can create scrolls, he can read scrolls, and at level 1 he gets to choose which spell list he is going to be pulling from. He can pull from the Magician table, or he can pull from the Necromancer, Cryomancer, or Pyromancer table. Now, what this allows this class to do is kind of take on its own persona. And they even kind of write it in up top. If you see on the attribute requirements, if a death soldier, that would be your necromancer. If you're going to be a fire lord, that would be your pyromancer. Or maybe you're going to be an ice lord, that's going to be your cryomancer, or an ice knight, or a fire knight of something of that nature. So basically what you're going to do is you're going to be able to really kind of tailor a unique experience in playing your warlock, because not only are you a fighter, you're also choosing one of these magic tables to pull from as well. And the cool thing is that your fighting ability and casting ability go up at the same time. Now, if you'll look at the experience table, you're going to need as much experience to level this as a barbarian, so it'll be a little bit slower leveling, but you're basically leveling two classes at the same time. It's pretty strong. So I am super excited to see what the Warlock can do at the table. I think they bring a lot of fun abilities and a lot of variance to the table. And I'm very interested to see how they play. So that is the fighter roundup, as we have talked about the Riddle of Steel. And so I'm curious to see if out there, if you've played this game, you know, what fighter classes have you seen at the table? What are you impressed with? What are you playing out there that you like, I don't know if I like this or not, I'd like to look at something else. So if you like this type of content, be sure to like, subscribe to the channel, send me a message if you want to see some different content like this. Would love any feedback you can from the community. And as always, keep rolling with advantage. Thanks a lot. Bye.